I welcome into Carp's Corner. Big show this week as we start getting close to the Christmas holiday here. We've got bowl games coming up. We've got 4 weeks left in the NFL season. It looks like all the coaching moves are kind of locked in and where everybody is going to be landing for the most part. We'll have one that we're going to talk about today. Get into a lot of those bowl games and matchups come next week because that's when that stuff really starts to heat up. Early signing period in college football. We're right in the thick of that. It's December, 15th, 16th, 17th, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So time to sign before National Signing Day. And is this even relevant anymore? Should it still be the case? It was initially put into place to help the players to make sure they secured spots, but where everything's going right now, is it something that, it's exceeded its brief, useful life? So, dive into that. Fox puts out a list, most valuable college football franchises, college football franchises, I guess, or football athletic programs, whatever it is, since they're really not their own entities, as you will. The athletic department is, but looking at the value of each football team, and some surprises in there, not truly shocking. But I think that you'll see that there's a consolidation of power really within 2 regions of the country. And that's probably not surprising either. When you start talking about what parts of college of the country really care about college football and where there's a lot of people and where there's that population meets passion, that's where you start to get some of these values that are created. Some rough news for New Orleans. Hopefully they'll be able to get this thing rectified. But with the addition of the NFL 17th game going to an 18-week regular season, how that's going to impact site selection for Super Bowls, playoffs, everything and the like. So a little bit of news right there that we need to get into because let's think. There's some great cities out there that I think do a great job of hosting Super Bowls, and you never want to see anyone get excluded. But when you start moving these timelines, there's certain things on the calendar that you cannot change. And so I know the NFL thinks that, since they exist on Sunday and rule the Sabbath, that they are in essence the holy creator. And that is not the case. There are other things out there that have existed before the NFL and will exist after the existence of football and the NFL, assuming that does come to an end at some point. So some stuff cities are going to have to make decisions on in the NFL moving forward. And there's some great cities that obviously have been a part of the Super Bowl for a long, long time. Browns, there's some more news coming out there. Baker Mayfield saying there's some internal problems. That's what I was planning on getting into today. And then in the last, 24 hours, we've seen a vast array of information that's come in with the Browns. They're sitting there at 7-6. This is the big push for them. People are talking about them being the most disappointing team, but there still is a chance for them to turn it around. But what needs to happen and what is going on there in Cleveland and how that can potentially get rectified? Because like I said, winning cures everything. It is the great elixir that you're going to find. And we got Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. They're sitting there. What are they? 2-11, I believe, right now. They've got an opportunity to get some wins. Will he survive the season? In my opinion, do I think he'll be back next year? Talk about that. But starting out, coaching moves. Mario Cristobal going to Oregon, Dan Lanning from Georgia going from Oregon to Miami, Dan Lanning going from Georgia, DC up to Oregon. Looks like everything is in place in college football, especially at some of these blue blood programs. However, there's been reports now, there's been talks, potential overtures of the Chicago Bears being potentially interested in Ryan Day, Ohio State's head coach. Why would they be interested in him? Well, you look at what he's done in his 3 years at Ohio State. He's lost 4 games, 2 college football playoff appearances, a national championship appearance. Coach Justin Fields to the first round. Helped develop Dwayne Haskins in his 1 year under Ryan at Ohio State. Probably would have been served better to have a second season as well. But, it is what it is at that point with him. But he's done a great job. He's a young, dynamic coach. He had previous stops in the NFL. He has NFL ties. And so there's this natural thought that go to Chicago. And you know what we'll do? We'll pair you up with our young quarterback that we drafted, who has looked, of all the quarterbacks outside of Mac Jones, that Justin Fields has been the most productive quarterback this year of all of the rookies. Trey Lance has been on the shelf. He's been in and out. Zach Wilson on the shelf hasn't looked great, here and there. Mac Jones has looked really good. And so you can't sit there and besmirch him. But Trevor Lawrence down in Jacksonville, one of the reasons that, there's a little bit of hot seat on Urban Meyer, he really hasn't looked as good. But Justin Fields, to Aaron Rodgers' admission, has some of those star qualities. He can escape the pocket. He's got the big arm. He hasn't made every play, but his line isn't good. He needs some help, but they're struggling in Chicago right now. And so there's this natural thought process that, should the Bears choose to move on from Matt Nagy and possibly GM Ryan Pace, will they go after Ohio State head coach Ryan Day? Now, that scares a lot of Buckeye fans. Frankly, it should, because as we've seen before, in this year, it used to be coaches didn't leave elite college jobs for other elite college jobs. Well, Lincoln Riley to USC, could say Oregon, Mario Cristobal to Miami possibly, and then Brian Kelly to LSU. So that has happened. There really isn't like a home base elite college job for Ryan Day. He's from New Hampshire. He played there. Like that's not a destination job for a head coach of his caliber at this point. And so you'd have to think in college, he's here. He got handed a great job. Jim Harbaugh said he was bored on third base, thinks he hit a triple. I know Ryan Day is very upset about that. And we'll get into part of those comments as well, because he's done a terrific job, but he inherited a program with great recruits, a big time name. And then obviously Urban did a great job of setting up the bones, the structure, the player development directors, the strength coach, the training staff, all of those things that are really difficult for a first-time head coach. They were here for Ryan Day to be able to absorb. And I think that honestly helped him. I'm not going to hold it against him because he's done a fantastic job. He's recruited at a high level. He's coached at a high level, and, he holds his coaches accountable. And I think frankly, I think Ryan is one of the young stars in the game. And I say young just because he's closer to my age than his players. However, with his NFL ties, is this something that he may want to get back into? And it all comes down to this. And this is the thing for a lot of coaches. It's a thing for a lot of people in life. What's your why? Why do you do what you do? Is it the monetary gain? Is it the power? Is it the prestige? Is it simply just to be able to provide for your family? Are you getting to do what you love? Do you want stability? The thing with Ryan, and I've joked with him about this in the past, the NFL, I mean, you're 3-4 years, you're getting churned and burned, you're getting fired. I mean, we look at Pete Carroll, you look at the Bill Belichick's. I mean, some of these coaches that are anomalies that don't exist, aberrations that don't exist anywhere else, where they've been at their place for a long time and they're not subjected to that consistent turnover. Heck, Mike McCarthy was just fired recently in Green Bay. Now he's at Dallas. Like the NFL, the old adage, not for long, like you're moving around a lot. And you don't get fired in the NFL for wins and losses. You get fired for failing to meet expectations. We'll get into the Cleveland Browns later. But those are the reasons why. And so I think Ryan Day, and without speaking for him, I think he's happy at Ohio State. He's got 3 young kids. I think his wife enjoys it here. They're small town folks. Columbus has a lot of the amenities of a big city, but it's not New York. It's not Chicago. And so it has a little bit of that small town feel if you want it. But the fact before he got at Ohio State, he was moving all the time. So he comes in here, coordinator, becomes the head coach. And now he's got a little stability. And when your kids are young, you're winning and you're getting compensated a lot. And that's the thing. Ohio State has to step up to the plate and pay Ryan Day. He cannot be the 4th highest paid coach in the conference. Look at Mel Tucker getting his big money. James Franklin. Jim Harbaugh is going to get another big deal. Like he cannot be below all those guys. He has achieved more than any of them in a very short time frame at the collegiate level. Now, Jim Harbaugh has obviously been to a Super Bowl. Ryan Day has not been a head NFL coach, but he's done so much in such a short time, and he needs to be compensated for it. But I can't sit here and tell you that if the Chicago Bears come knocking and offer, a 5-year deal for $10 million a year, that he would say no to that. It would probably depend a lot on who the GM is, how the control works and everything. But Ohio State has the monetary capacity to step up and take care of this. Because I'm not inclined to think that Ryan is looking at the horizon for the next best job. I think he's happy where he is, and I think he likes where he is right now. And there may be a day where that doesn't exist for him anymore, and his why might change. But as of right now, he seems fairly content doing what he's doing and being compensated at a high rate for it. You make some changes on the staff. You already saw him bring in defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. There's going to be some things that happen and a little bit of movement, and he's not afraid to make those decisions as a young first-time head coach. And I give him a lot of credit for stepping up and seeing problems head on and taking them on. He comes off as a really nice guy. He's got the red cheeks and everything, but make no mistake about it. Ryan Day is an intense competitor and wants to make sure his school has the resources to be able to compete in this new NIL transfer portal world. He wants the staff to be compensated well, and he wants to be compensated well. And so those things need to happen. If that happens, Buckeye fans, after a loss to Michigan and Jim Harbaugh making those comments, I think he's competitive enough that he wants to finish the job and be able to make sure that he has the record against Michigan and Jim Harbaugh that he needs. College has changed a lot, and he understands that, but there is still some greatness to the power of the brands and some of these big games in college football. And I think that he is safe right now, but he needs to be taken care of. The athletic department at Ohio State needs to be able to do that. The boosters, the program, all of those things have got to step up to make sure, because if not, the NFL is going to continue to come calling. And I sat there, when I was, working with ESPN, and Louis Riddick, he would always talk about him being the next Redskins head coach or Washington football team head coach. Excuse me. This was years ago before that changed. The Washington head coach. And there's going to be overtures by different teams. The more successful he is in college, the more contact and the more inquiries he's going to get. And this Bears one with Justin Fields makes a lot of sense. And I can understand why. Remember, he coached for Chip Kelly in the NFL. Chip Kelly left Oregon, and ultimately took that Eagles job. Now he's back in college now, and maybe, he's had a conversation with Chip and he says, hey, the NFL is not all it's cracked up to be as a head coach. You get to a big time program, maybe you just choose to stay there. I don't know. I can't sit here and say that, but I can't say what his why is, but it does seem like he has everything in place for his family life to be happy, him to have success professionally, and be personally in a good spot. And if you can check those boxes, usually it's going to work out. But they got to come to the table, and they got to come soon, and they got to swing big. Early signing period. December 15th to the 17th, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before Christmas. You still have National Signing Day. If you don't get it done in that small window, it's going to be in February. With all the coaching movement and all the firings in the portal, I don't even know if you need this anymore. And the question is too, what is a national letter of intent? What does that even mean anymore with the transfer portal? If you sign it and 3 days later you'd like to go somewhere else, I mean, do you even have to matriculate and show up at school? Do you even have to do those things? So I'm not even sure what's signing day, and everybody hoots and hollers, and it's a big day. You beat your chest for the best class. And believe me, recruiting is not inconsequential. You look at the recruiting rankings, and then you look at the list of teams that have been in the playoff. Those lists are fairly similar. The teams with the best players are the ones that go to the playoff. And so you need to recruit. But when you get these guys and they get there, it's a whole nother beast now, because you've got to keep them happy early. You've got to play young guys. You've got to realize if guys aren't worth investing and they're going to leave anyway, and you build these relationships, and all of a sudden it used to be like under the table cash. Now everybody can say, hey, we're handing you this NIL package. So every school, Texas has done it. I guarantee you got A&M, Bama, Georgia, all these schools. I mean, Ohio State, Michigan, they're going to have to step up to the table and be able to offer kids not only a scholarship, but an NIL package with it. Now, I'm a firm believer, like, you don't step over dollars to pick up pennies. The real value is being able to go to one of these big time schools. You're going to get your NIL money, but then you're ultimately going to get developed and get drafted at a high level. And then you're starting to talk about huge dollars with your NFL career. That's where that ultimately matters. And so I don't think it's the be all end all, but when you sign your national letter of intent, what does it mean? You can go anywhere right after this. And so I don't understand. It's we make a big deal about it today, but in talking to some college coaches, like, they just kind of scratch their heads. It's like, all right, we've got them for today. If they decide they don't want to be here sometime between now and the time they're supposed to enroll, what does that even mean? What are we supposed to do with that? Where do they go? They can go anywhere they want, and there's no restrictions with it. And so that begins to beg the question, if you're an NFL coach, do you now have more control over your players than a college coach? Because it used to always be college coaches didn't translate to the NFL because they didn't have control. There's player mobility. There was free agency. You couldn't talk to those guys the same way. Well, now there's no contracts with players. They can just leave. I don't like a coach. I can just hop in the portal, slide to some other school. People talk about coaches being able to move and go wherever they want and coaching flexibility. Yeah, I think that's great. They also have buyouts and they have contracts. And so if you're going to leave one school, either you or the next school is ultimately going to have to pay something, whatever is agreed upon in your contract, for you to be released from that and go somewhere else. And so coaches can leave. The problem is players, they can leave without consequence. And I'm a big player movement guy, and I think it's good. And having the opportunity to be able to do it. I was a proponent of, hey, 2 years, then you get to move and you can do what you want. College football and football in general is really difficult. It gets even harder in the NFL. But players come there, they sign 4-year deals, 5-year deals out of college. You just can't say, hey, the coach is hard on me here. I had a great rookie year. Someone else wants me. Hey, I'm going to jump in the free agency portal. That's not how it works. And so guys can do that in college. So I would argue now that NFL coaches, you can actually coach harder in the NFL. You're dealing with older guys. Yeah, they're making money, but so are guys in college now. But they're more mature. They can handle it, and they're under contract. You at least know when they're able to leave. Either you could trade them or you could cut them, but they have to stay there at least through the duration of their contract, should you choose that to happen as a coach in a front office. And so all of a sudden this is turned, and you have these young guys who are, they've got parents, they've got family members, aunts, uncles, friends, whoever it is that influences in their life. And this is a little bit of, shaking my fist at the sky and say, I wish the way it used to be. That's not it. But you have guys who are young. There's this money being thrown around. That's great. Get it all. Player mobility, being able to leave a bad situation. That's great. But there is times where you have to work through difficult situations. And I don't know if players are truly doing that anymore when you can just slide into the portal and get on out of there. I think that's the one thing that makes this really, really tough. And coaches have talked about it. Lane Kiffin has lamented it, and people are saying, well, it's easy for him. He's a guy that left Tennessee, 6-year deal, goes to USC, all this different stuff. Yeah, but there's still buyouts and there's things. And he did all that, but that still doesn't mean that what he's saying about players leaving in the bidding process with the NIL, that still doesn't make it less true. And so I'm all for players getting their money. I'm all for players' ability to transfer and move. But if you're going to transfer, there still should be some consequence. And the thought was brought up to me. If you transfer outside of your first year, you got to pay back your first year of tuition, room and board, the expenses that the university put out for you. And your next school can pick it up, or you have to pay it out of NIL money or whatever it might be. And so you have the ability to move and you can play right away. But now there is still an element where there is some level of consequence for the player of what they're going to be required to do should they still leave. I don't know if that's the perfect solution or not, but there's a lot of issues that are all coming into play right now. And we've got early signing period. And does it even mean anything? Is it even worthwhile? Who knows? Fox put out a list. NFL's, or rather colleges' most valuable football programs. We'll rattle off the list quickly. You've got A&M in Texas sitting there at the top at $147 million a piece. You've got Michigan coming in third at 139, Bama at fourth at 134, Ohio State at fifth at 132 million. So that's the top five. So really, you have 3 SEC teams, and I'm putting Oklahoma in there because they're committed to the SEC, and that move is going to happen. And Texas, rather, both of those schools. And so you have 3 of the 5 are the SEC. The other 2 are the Big Ten. Then you have, that's 6. You have Oklahoma coming in with 129 million. Georgia at $125. Notre Dame at 120. Florida at 117, and Auburn at 117. So 4 of the next 5, with Oklahoma being an SEC school or SEC programs, with Notre Dame being the lone independent in Northern school in that mix. Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, and then 7 essentially SEC programs. Now, When you look at this, you've got Penn State coming in at 14 at 104, Oregon coming in at 14 at 96, Florida State tied there at 96 million. But here's the crux of it. There's only 6 schools out of the top 25 most valuable college football programs that are non-Big Ten and non-SEC. There's more SEC than Big Ten, but Big Ten's coming in second by a large margin, obviously. And Notre Dame is an independent sitting there, and they're the highest ranked at 8th. You got Clemson pulling up the top, the back end of the top 25, but you got Iowa, you got Michigan State, you got Nebraska in there, some of your other Big Ten schools, but the majority of the SEC, a lot of Big Ten. And then, you're talking about Oregon, Florida State, Clemson, some schools like that you're throwing in there. College football, the consolidation of power has shifted to the Midwest into the Southeastern Conference. It's where the population base is in the Midwest that cares about football. And there's a massive give a crap factor about football in the SEC. And that's the reality of it. And that's how it is. And so that's what we're dealing with right now. And they've got Big Ten's got a new TV deal that's going to be on the way. SEC's got their new TV deal, that's going to be rolling in. The problem is that there's a lot of these schools, a lot of these conferences, they have bad TV deals. The Pac-12, not great. ACC's decent, but it's not great. And as the years go by, more and more money pouring in. When you're having schools that are getting 70, 80, $90 million, somewhere in that range, and the Big Ten and SEC and everybody else is getting, in the 30s or 20s, the gap is only going to get wider. Better players are going to go there. Now, the NIL can change some of that with some of the money that you can put around for recruiting and other stuff. But generally, the best programs are going to be the ones that have the biggest boosters and the biggest pocketbooks. And they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to write the biggest checks to get people to go where they need to go. And so that's one of the things you're going to be battling. But I thought that was interesting that Fox put that out, and you just start going through and counting and checking the list and what it is. I mean, it's a scary prospect if you're in one of those other conferences, knowing that the gap is only going to expand. Now, some NFL news. New Orleans was supposed to host Super Bowl 24. And now with the NFL, this is one of the unintended consequences with them pushing back to the 18-week season, 17-game schedule, and then the playoffs, the bye week, and the Super Bowl, and everything else. It's pushed back the Super Bowl now. And so New Orleans is not going to be able to host the Super Bowl in 2024 due to Mardi Gras. Now, that's going to happen from time to time, depending how the calendar hits. Mardi Gras ain't moving, and it's going to be there. And New Orleans, I believe, has hosted more Super Bowls than anyone else. It's one of the great cities to host, the Sugar Bowl, college football playoff, national championship, Super Bowl. It's walkable. It's a fun time. It's great food, great experiences. They're unbelievable hosts to be able to come down there, but that stinks. Now they're going to get it pushed back in 2025 and they'll get that Super Bowl. I like the fact that Vegas is getting it. We'll see how they're able to handle it. And if it's, is ease of operation of New Orleans, it'll be in the winter, so it's not going to be unbearably hot, which will be nice. But it stinks, though, to see that for the city of New Orleans, who does such a great job hosting these events, that there are now going to be years where they're going to have to try to look at the calendar and figure out where Mardi Gras hits, and they're not going to be able to get bids each and every year, depending on how that schedule of the calendar breaks out. And so that's pour one out for New Orleans. Hopefully that doesn't happen too often. They can stay very regularly in the rotation, because I think it's truly one of the great venues that you see for hosting sporting events and big events. Cleveland Browns. This was supposed to be the year. I picked them to make the AFC Championship. There are people that picked them to make the Super Bowl. There's a lot of people now that are saying they've been the biggest disappointment in the NFL. You hear that on a lot of talk shows. Maybe so. They're sitting there, they're a game above 500 and a game out of first place in their division. They're not going to be able to get the 1 seed overall. But if you're not the 1 seed, okay, you don't get the bye, and that's what it is. But they still have the ability to win their division. Now, Baker said that there was a lot of, some internal troubles and some internal strife that they were having to deal with. This was supposed to be the year that they figured it out. If they win the division, I don't think this year is a disappointment. That's still in play. They have 4 big games coming up with the Raiders this week, Packers, Steelers, and Bengals. 3 of those are very winnable. I don't think they can beat the Packers, but the rest of those 3 are very winnable games. And with Lamar Jackson battling, a hampered ankle, he's supposed to be able to play, but that doesn't matter if he can't move the way that he has. I believe the Ravens play Green Bay this week. It's going to be tough for them to be able to have that type of success, and be able to finish the season strong. So Bengals, potentially Browns, pushing Steelers aren't that far back. Here's now what the Browns are battling. Kevin Stefanski, he's in the COVID protocols. Baker Mayfield, and I believe 8 other players, they're in the COVID protocol. So in a week where they get a chance to go to 8-6, could pick up a game and be tied for first, they're battling this and battling the COVID-19. Now, I think all these guys are vaccinated, 2 negative tests, 24 hours apart. That could flip some of this a little bit and get guys back in there. But this was supposed to be the season. As I mentioned earlier, you don't get fired in the NFL for wins and losses. You get fired for failing to meet expectations. The expectation is the Cleveland Browns could win the division, have postseason success. They win the division, I think it's success. You win a playoff game, I think it's success for Cleveland. This is a huge week. Case Keenum might be the starting quarterback. Who knows who they may have out there? The NFL is battling this across the league where I think 6, 7, 8 teams have had to go to their virtual COVID protocols. It's not going to be an easy task for Cleveland to overcome. They can do it. And if they do, I think this will be a galvanizing force for this organization. They've got some things they've got to get done. They've got some movement that has to happen. They've got to get a win this week against the Raiders, who appear to be packing it in for the season, but there are no gimmies in the NFL. But the Cleveland Browns need that win. That's going to be big. Now, lastly, I'll leave you with this. Urban Meyer, Jacksonville Jaguars are 2-11. A lot of noise surrounding it, him yelling, Marvin Jones, the stuff from earlier in the year with him at the bar, coaches, all these things coming out about him. Winning solves everything. They have the Texans and the Jets coming up in the next 2 weeks. They got to win those games. If they lose those 2, they might be fired, all of them, the coaching staff. If they win those 2, then all of a sudden you're sitting there at a 4-win season. Now, I had their ceiling maybe at 6 this year. Their floor at 4. You went from 1 win to 4 wins. Now, you need to see development out of your rookie quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who doesn't look like he's been developed. There's a lot of noise around the organization, but you have an opportunity to get 2 wins against the Jets and the Texans, 2 teams that you should be comparable talent-wise with. I know the Jags are beat up, but that doesn't matter at this point. Find a way to get wins. Find a way to get it done. If they do that, I think Urban's fine. If not, they're in trouble. They at least need a split, and that will get them to 3 wins. But 4 wins for the Jags, I think is fine. Now, can they still make a move on him? Yeah. Is there still going to be changing the coaching staff? Probably. But they've got a really young roster. They've been beat up this year. They're going to have a nice draft position. Trevor Lawrence, you still think is the guy, but you have to see some growth and development out of him over these next couple of weeks. That needs to occur. And if it doesn't, well, then you're going to be wondering, is he the guy? But winning cures everything. And if the Jags get to 4 wins and win these next 2, which aren't going to be easy, because those teams are looking at those as wins as well, I think everything will kind of calm down, and that elixir will be able to kind of soothe everyone in Duval County. That's it for this edition of Carp's Corner. Next week, we're going to get in bowl games, more coaching stuff. Things are spinning around. We'll see as these recruiting classes get finished up. It's going to be pretty exciting. We'll dive into all that on Carp's Corner next week. Thanks.